from. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, I'm thinking about the time change. Every time a time change happens, and everybody's always like, it's ruining my child. But then the last few, I feel like we've had the time change and a full moon at the same time.
Yes.
And it's game over.
Yes, the full moon, especially if it's a super moon, which means that moon is closer to the Earth, which we had recently.
Yeah, and that's the like big orange, beautiful
right.
looking.
Right. The kids can get way more emotional than usual. Yeah. Especially water sign and fire sign kids because they're very emotive in general. And the thing with the children is they don't understand what's happening. They don't necessarily, that's the thing with kids, they don't understand some of the overwhelming emotions they have. That's, it's a parent's job to come in and help them identify and articulate and work through the emotions. So, but kids do tend to be, I don't want to like say misbehaving too much, but they tend to be, little kids may be fussier, older kids may just be more emotional in general. And to deal with emotions, right? You identify the emotion, you articulate the emotion, you let yourself feel it, you sit with it for a bit and you release it. You don't want to suggest to kids to repress emotions. That's why I get very triggered when I hear people say, don't cry to the kids, or they tell them not to cry.
Yes.
Don't suggest that they should be repressing emotions. I mean, younger kids are going to cry. They just don't have the control over their emotions adults have or should have, because not all adults have control over their emotions either. So, but that's how you deal with emotions in a healthy way. And my kid, he used to have these dramatic emotional outbursts, but over years of me remaining calm and helping him articulate things, now he calms down very quickly, and he'll apologize to me a lot. Like, I'm sorry, I snapped at you. I'm sorry I snapped at you, Mom. Like, that's fine. Like, no big deal. It happens. Let's move on, right?
Just so I always, whenever my daughter is in the heat of emotion, I'll be like, let's think about like the things we have in our toolbox. So what helps us to feel better? Like, we're counting, we're doing this, we're doing that. And over the last couple of weeks, I've heard her, like, she's really upset. And she's like, Mom, I think we need to find my toolbox.
Oh, that's adorable.
So it's like, it's a thing. So she knows that we're
that's great.
developing
You're giving her the tools. You're giving her the tools now. And yeah, they'll be very emotionally healthy because they'll know what to do. That's the thing, you don't want to let the emotions control you. Right.
Yeah, going through the waves.
Sagittarius is an energy that is, prone to these, being dramatic sometimes, prone to very big, doing everything in a big way, right? So, right. But that's great. It's a great energy. I love Sagittarius.
I mean, she's a very sweet little girl, so. Awesome. And she'll, without knowing what it means, she'll be like, oh, Mom, we're just a couple of Sag gals.
That's right. That's
yeah, that's exactly what we are.
Well, when you have the same or similar either sun sign or moon sign to your child, it does take less effort. As long as you have self-understanding, you'll understand where they're coming from, because it takes less effort, right? Because the energy is very similar or the same in your case. So with energy is very different, it does take more effort. And that's why I see a lot of conflict.
My husband has a very hard time. Okay. He's a Leo.
Okay.
And he'll just be like, you can fill me in on how this plays out, but like, I need to step back. And because he also knows that I get it well, like I get it, so I can have it fixed in minutes.
Right.
As opposed to them butting heads about it and then a resolution happening.
Yeah. Well, Leo's a fire sign too, but it's a fixed energy sign. So it's a little bit more, has a little bit more of the stubborn nature.
Sag. Very accurate. I got it.
Okay.
Retrograde Mercury. What does that mean?
Oh, yeah.
Mercury retrograde.
Mercury retrograde. That's great. Great question. So that means that Mercury is appearing, the planet Mercury is appearing to move backward on the ellipse, right, in the sky. It doesn't actually move backward, but it appears to. So we say when Mercury stations direct, it kind of stops this movement for a bit, and then it moves in a backward motion around the ellipse, or appears to have the backward motion, I should say. So Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, which is my sun sign. I have a Gemini sun, Gemini Mercury, Gemini Venus, a lot of Gemini energy in my chart. So, and my sun has a Gemini moon. So, when Mercury is retrograde, Mercury is the planet that rules Gemini. It's the planet associated with the third house, which is the house of communication and technology. So, and travel. So, we generally say that you can expect some travel delays, communication and technology snafus when Mercury is in retrograde, which is always the case with me. It's always a really tough time. So, mostly, I think the most profound thing I see with Mercury retrograde is communication, like misinterpretations when people are communicating.
Okay.
So people will say something and the other person will just not understand what they're talking about, or there'll be a lot of hurt feelings because there were misinterpretations. So we generally counsel people to be very careful before drafting important emails and important written messages. Be very careful about signing contracts. Make sure you review everything very carefully, and be very careful in how you're communicating to your partner and your children, because there's an extra potential for miscommunication and hurt feelings. So, so in fact, my son, this is like last year, he got in trouble for like running his mouth at school. So, because he's my son, so it is what it is. And I made a comment like, well, it's Mercury retrograde. And he says, yeah, it's Mercury retrograde. And that's what's making me say bad stuff. I said, no. I said, I appreciate you acknowledging Mercury retrograde. But yeah, so Mercury goes retrograde, 3 or 4 times a year. So for about 6 weeks at a time. So it just went direct again after being in a retrograde for about 3 weeks. And it was retrograding in its home sign of Gemini. So it's like an extra oomph of all the energy we've been talking about. So I'm very happy it's direct again, because I feel like life is going on now, finally moving ahead. So that's what we mean when we say, and any of the planets can retrograde. There are a couple other planets retrograding right now, like Jupiter is retrograding. So yeah, that's what we mean, is that the planet, appears to be moving backward.
So then if other planets also go into retrograde, why does Mercury, is it just like the consequences of that are worse?
So because
I feel like it gets a bad rap.
Planet. Yeah, it's a personal planet, so it affects more strongly like how we communicate. So Mercury represents how you communicate. It represents several things in the chart to the individual. How it represents how you communicate, your learning style, and where the planet Mercury, the house that it's in your birth chart, will tell you kind of those areas of life, fields of experience that will be emphasized in regarding to the Mercury expression in your chart. So so Mercury is naturally at home in an air sign because it rules Gemini, so it's very much at home in like Gemini, Aquarius, Libra. If it's in like a water sign, it's less comfortable, because Mercury is about communication, and the water signs tend to be more private about communicating emotions and other things. So, but yeah, that's kind of what it represents in somebody's chart. Yeah, so you look at the sign position of Mercury in the person's chart to know kind of how they express that energy, their learning style, how they communicate, and things like that.
Interesting. So you always end up scrolling social media and everybody is just like, Mercury's in retrograde.
Right. I know. It's just, I guess it's the most, because it happens so much more frequently, I think, than the other planets. Yeah. I think it gets the most airtime. And because it's a personal planet, it tends to affect people a little bit more strongly. Now, interestingly, there are people who are born when Mercury is retrograding, and those people, my observation is they pretty much weather Mercury retrograde very well because they're kind of used to that energy. So
that's their normal.
Exactly. That's their normal, right? So, but yeah, there are people that are born under, you could be obviously born when a planet's retrograding. So when the planet's retrograding, if you were born under Mercury or Jupiter or whatever retrograde, that means that the energy of that planet tends to be directed a little bit more inward. Right?
Okay.
So, yeah.
Fascinating. If you've liked hanging out with the Mom Files, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below.